Welcome to Dark Feed, where once you find the feed, it finds you. They called it Fox Hollow Farm, an upscale estate nestled in the wooded outskirts of Westfield, Indiana. 2-story brick house, indoor pool, 15 acres of serene, private land. A place people dreamed of retiring to. But behind its elegant gates lay hell. Because the man who owned Fox Hollow, Herb Baumeister, didn't just live there. He collected bodies there. And by the time investigators unearthed the truth, there were over 11,000 human bones scattered just beyond the patio. This is the story of a man who wore a mask so well, even his family didn't know what he was. This is the story of mannequins by the pool, of graves hidden beneath horse trails, and of a predator who hunted the gay nightlife of Indianapolis, only to return home and bury his secrets in the soil. This is the story of Herb Baumeister and the farm full of ghosts he left behind. Herbert Richard Baumeister was born in 1947 in Indiana. By all appearances, he came from a decent home. But even as a child, things weren't quite right. He was described as off, detached. He would laugh at inappropriate times, drift off mid-sentence, or stare too long without blinking. Teachers said he had no friends. He brought a dead bird to school once, not to bury it, to dissect it. Another time, he urinated on a teacher's desk. Still, he made it to adulthood, got married, had kids. By the late 1980s, Herb was a successful businessman, running a thrift store chain called Save-A-Lot. He had a big house, wealth, a wife named Julie, and 3 children. To the world, he was eccentric, but harmless. Behind closed doors, though, things were already rotting. Herb's marriage was cold. Julie would later testify they only had sex 6 times in over 2 decades. He drank heavily, stayed up all night, and started spending time away from home, always with vague excuses about business meetings or late inventory runs. And then there was the pool. The family had an indoor swimming pool at Fox Hollow Farm, but Herb kept it decorated year-round with dozens of mannequins, some sitting, some standing, all posed like they were at a cocktail party. Julie thought it was just one of his quirks, but the truth was far darker. Herb was recreating something, reliving something, and those mannequins weren't props. They were replacements. Meanwhile, across town, gay men were disappearing. In the early 1990s, the Indianapolis LGBTQ+ community was growing slowly but surely. There were a few popular bars downtown. The scene was discreet, often hush-hush, but lively. Then one by one, men started vanishing. All of them gay, in their 20s or 30s. Last seen at local bars like the Varsity Lounge or 501 Eagle. And all seemed to vanish without a trace. Their families filed reports. Police took them but made little effort. This was the Midwest in the early 90s. Gay men disappearing? Most cops chalked it up to moving away or lifestyle decisions. But one man cared. His name was Virgil Vandagriff, a private investigator. A retired sheriff's deputy, he ran a small PI firm and had been hired by families to look into the missing men. And Vandagriff noticed a pattern. All were last seen at gay bars. All had similar builds. And all disappeared on weekend nights. Vandagriff began to suspect a serial killer. He reached out to police. They brushed him off. But he didn't stop. He dug deeper, started asking around. And finally, someone talked. A young man came forward. He wouldn't give his real name, only went by Tony. He said he had met a man at a bar, gone home with him, and barely escaped with his life. Tony's story is the crack that shattered the illusion. He said the man called himself Brian Smart, claimed he was a landscaper, wealthy, charming, drove a Buick. Brian had invited him back to a house he was working on. The place was massive, dark, weirdly empty, except for the indoor pool, decorated with mannequins. Brian offered him a drink. started talking about autoerotic asphyxiation, asked if Tony had ever tried it. Tony played along, tried to stay calm. Brian pulled out a pool hose, wrapped it around Tony's throat, and told him to trust him. As Tony started to lose consciousness, he saw Brian's face change. Smiling, excited, predatory. Tony pretended to pass out, went limp. Brian released the hose, turned his back. That's when Tony got up and ran. He never got the real name, just Brian Smart, just a car, just a fake smile. But he remembered the house, and especially the mannequins. Van Dagraff took this information to police. Still, they hesitated, until one night Tony saw the man again at a bar, followed him outside, got the plate number. Police traced it back to Herbert Baumeister. Everything clicked. The wealth, the pool, the mannequins, the lies. But there was a problem. Fox Hollow Farm was in Hamilton County, and the missing persons cases were in Marion County. Two different jurisdictions, two different sets of red tape. When police finally approached Herb, he was calm, polite, said they were welcome to search his home if they got a warrant, but they didn't have enough evidence for one. So they waited, stalled, watched, and then Julie Baumeister left him, took the kids, filed for divorce, and gave police permission to search the property. What they found was hell itself. In the backyard of Fox Hollow, behind the shed, beneath a thin layer of topsoil, investigators found bones. Dozens, hundreds, thousands, fragments of human remains, scattered like leaves across the property. At first they thought maybe 1 or 2 bodies, then 5, 10. Eventually, over 11,000 fragments belonging to at least 11 different men. Most could never be fully identified. They were too decomposed, too destroyed. Some had been burned in fire pits, others shattered into pieces, all hidden among the woods and animal burrows. Fox Hollow Farm had been a slaughterhouse, and Herb had been the butcher. But Herb wasn't there when the search began. He had fled. In June 1996, as the bodies were being unearthed from his estate, Herb was in Canada, sleeping in his car, drinking heavily and writing a note. It read, "I'm sorry. I'm a failure. The business is in ruins. The family is gone. Please forgive me. I didn't mean to hurt anyone." There was no mention of the bodies.
No confession.
No acknowledgement of the horror he'd caused. He placed the note beside him and shot himself in the head. The first time they looked, they found a skull. It was behind the carriage house, under a thin layer of topsoil and leaves. The jawbone was missing. The teeth had been removed, and it was burned, as if someone had tried to reduce it to ash. That was the first. Then they found a second. Then ribs, femurs, pile of vertebrae. The deeper they dug into Fox Hollow Farm, the more the ground began to give up its secrets. And every secret was human. By the end of the search, authorities had uncovered over 11,000 bone fragments. The forensics team believed they came from at least 11 different men, possibly many more. All of them male, young, mostly between the ages of 20 and 40, likely killed between 1991 and 1995, and all dismembered, scattered, and often burned. Some were found in shallow graves, others just tossed into the woods. One was buried near a children's play set. It wasn't just murder. It was methodical, cold, and rehearsed. Inside the house, they found more. Dozens of videotapes, none labeled. A hidden camera setup in the pool area. And the infamous mannequins, now surrounded by dust and silence. But the tapes, blank, or corrupted, or maybe already removed. Some investigators still believe Herb recorded his kills, and that someone, maybe Herb himself, destroyed the footage before fleeing. But if that footage ever existed, it was gone. What remained were bones. Bones and clues. The victims, Of the 11-plus sets of remains discovered at Fox Hollow Farm, only a few could be positively identified. Among them, Roger Allen Goodlett, 34, last seen leaving a gay bar in Indianapolis in July 1994. Stephen Hale, 26, disappeared in April 1994. Richard Hamilton, 20, missing since 1993. Manuel Resendez, 31, vanished in 1993. Jeffrey Jones, 31, gone in 1993. Mike Kiley, 22, missing in 1993. Johnny Bayer, 20, disappeared after telling friends he was meeting a new friend. The rest, too damaged to identify. Some bones were mere slivers, fractured by time, scattered by animals, or crushed under years of silence. The families waited. Many still do. What made the case even more horrific was the location of the remains. Some were just feet from the back patio. Others lined the edge of a walking trail. A few were found under children's play equipment, where Herb's own kids had run and laughed, unaware. Herb didn't hide the bodies far away. He lived among them, every day, every night. He drank beside them, grilled burgers on the deck above them, slept yards away from where skulls lay buried. It wasn't carelessness. It was comfort. This wasn't a man afraid of being caught. This was someone who had convinced himself he never would be. The timeline. Investigators believe Herb's killing spree started in 1991. That's when the first men began vanishing from the gay bar scene in Indianapolis. All followed the same pattern. Met at a bar. Left willingly with Herb, who called himself Brian Smart. Never seen again. Tony Harris, the survivor who exposed Herb's double life, may have been the only one who got away. Police now suspect that Herb killed at least one victim per month during the peak of his spree. That's dozens of potential victims, many still unidentified. But why? Why did a father of three, a business owner, a man with no criminal record, become a killer? The answer may lie in Herb's mind. The psychology. According to court records, Herb Baumeister exhibited disturbing behavior from a young age. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia in his early 20s, though never treated long-term. He was described as emotionally distant, sexually repressed, prone to mood swings and obsessive routines. He led a double life, family man by day, predator by night. His marriage was devoid of intimacy. His business began failing, and his drinking worsened. Julie Baumeister later said she never knew about Herb's sexuality. She never suspected he was sneaking out to bars, picking up men. She certainly didn't suspect murder. But to investigators, it became clear Herb was a man who loathed himself. He hated his desires, feared being exposed, and instead of dealing with it, he externalized his rage by hurting the people who reminded him of who he was. He didn't just kill gay men. He killed reflections of himself. The connection to Ohio. After Herb's death in 1996, investigators began digging into similar cases in Ohio. Remember, Herb used to travel for business. He had family in Ohio. He had reasons to pass through Columbus, Dayton, Cincinnati. And guess what? Gay men had been disappearing from bars in Ohio as early as 1985. The bodies of several men were found in rural areas, dumped, strangled, or partially buried. These cases were never solved. Some believe Herb started killing in Ohio, then moved to Indiana. If true, the body count could be closer to 20 or more. But Herb would never face justice, because by the time the bones were identified, he was already dead. The suicide. On July 3, 1996, Herb Baumeister's body was found in Ontario, Canada, inside his car. He had parked in Pinery Provincial Park, overlooking Lake Huron, taken a .357 Magnum revolver, and shot himself in the head. He left a suicide note, but it said nothing about the murders. Instead, he apologized for failing his business, letting down his family, and feeling hopeless. He never admitted to a single killing, never named a victim, never said why, just ended it, as if that would be enough. But Fox Hollow Farm wasn't done. Not by a long shot. In the years that followed Herb's death, the new owners of the property began experiencing things. Voices, cold spots, shadowy figures near the edge of the woods. They started seeing a man walking the perimeter of the property, vanishing into the trees. One visitor saw a face in the pool window, only to find the room completely empty, and others reported dreams, always of a man smiling from the shadows. They say the land remembers, and at Fox Hollow there is a lot to remember. Even after Herb Baumeister blew his brains out with a revolver in the woods of Canada, his house never stopped breathing. The new owners of Fox Hollow Farm moved in not knowing what lay beneath the soil. Not fully. They'd heard about the bones, the news, the stories, but they thought it was over. They were wrong, because what Herb left behind wasn't just death. He left behind something restless. The new family. Rob and Vicky Graves purchased Fox Hollow Farm in the late 1990s. They wanted peace, land, a place to raise their son. The property was gorgeous. Manicured trails, tall trees, a spacious home. But from the moment they moved in, something felt off. The air felt heavy. Rooms were always too cold, even in summer. Doors opened on their own, and there were whispers, soft and fragmented, coming from the pool room. They told themselves it was their imagination, that the trauma from the murders was coloring their perception, until they started seeing things. The hauntings. It began with footsteps, heavy ones, moving across the hallway, when no one was there, then shadows. First just outside the corner of the eye, then directly in view. Once, Rob heard water splashing in the indoor pool. He walked in. The room was dry, but the air smelled like chlorine and sweat. Then came the figures, dark shapes pacing the woods behind the house. One night, Rob was walking the trails behind the property when he saw a man, pale, soaking wet, standing between the trees. When Rob blinked, the man was gone. Visitors started reporting the same thing. One man, a guest staying overnight, said he saw a young man standing by his bed, silently watching. Another woman said she woke up choking, like something was around her neck, only to find nothing there. Some described dreams where they were being dragged into the pool, unable to scream. Others heard whispers in the basement, low and pleading. And in nearly every encounter, the descriptions were eerily similar to the victims. The most disturbing activity centered around the indoor pool, Herb's private world. The room was always cold, even when the heat was blasting. Lights flickered. The water sometimes had ripples when no one was inside. One visitor claimed to see a man floating face down in the deep end. Another reported hearing gasping breaths and gurgling. Many believe it's where Herb did his stranglings, that he tied hoses around their necks, watched the life leave their eyes beneath the glow of his staged pool parties. Mannequins standing silent in the corners. That pool wasn't for swimming. It was for ritual, and the spirits trapped there never left. The paranormal investigation. The house became so infamous, it caught the attention of paranormal groups, including the Travel Channel's Ghost Adventures and other regional investigators. In one recorded session, the team claimed, voices came through on EVP, electronic voice phenomena, saying, "Get out," and "He hurt me." One investigator felt hands around his neck during an overnight lock-in. Cameras malfunctioned around the mannequin room, and thermal imaging showed human-shaped heat signatures in the pool area with no one there. Others reported seeing Herb himself, tall, gaunt, watching, still lingering, still feeding on fear. But was it ghosts? Or was it something else? Something imprinted. An echo of evil so strong it burned itself into the wood and brick of Fox Hollow? Even skeptics found it hard to dismiss. Because the trauma wasn't just emotional, it was visceral. You could feel it in your teeth, in your chest, like the house knew what happened there and remembered every second. The unfinished story. Despite the horrifying discoveries at Fox Hollow, Herb Baumeister was never charged. He never stood trial, never explained why, never gave names, and we still don't know how many people he killed. The 11 bodies found at the estate, that was only the beginning. Remember, police suspect he may have started killing in Ohio as early as 1985. Victims matching his MO had been turning up, strangled, dumped, forgotten. Some say his kill count could exceed 20, 30, maybe more. But without a confession, without records, we may never know. And then there are the videotapes. The police found several during the initial search. Some were blank. Some were damaged. Some were missing. What was on them? One rumor says Herb recorded his kills, that he staged them like parties, lighting, music, mannequins, death. If those tapes existed, they were either destroyed or hidden. Some believe a member of law enforcement found them and buried them. Others think Herb took them with him, burned them in Canada before pulling the trigger. Whatever the truth is, it's gone now. Like Herb, like his victims. What's left? Today, Fox Hollow Farm still stands. Some parts of it have been renovated. Tours have been given. Paranormal documentaries filmed. But the bones were never all recovered. Some fragments are still buried, still waiting. And sometimes people find them. A dog digging in the yard. A shovel hitting something solid. A new owner clearing brush, only to find a jawbone staring back. Because when you bury people like garbage, they have a way of coming back. The legacy. Herb Baumeister is one of the least known serial killers in American history. There's no Netflix series, no mainstream documentaries, no household name status. And yet, he may have killed more people than John Wayne Gacy. He lived in luxury, raised a family, smiled at neighbors, and killed in complete silence. That's the horror, the nothingness. No rage, no noise, just routine. And when he was finally cornered, he took the coward's way out, leaving behind a trail of shattered families, unanswered questions, and a home soaked in dread. But the story isn't over, because somewhere someone still remembers him. Somewhere, a family still waits for closure, for their brother, their son, their friend. And at night, when the wind moves just right across the fields of Fox Hollow Farm, you can almost hear it, the sound of the water rippling in the pool, the mannequins rustling, and the ghosts of young men who never got to leave.